Hi everyone, welcome to the Health by Hannah podcast. This is episode 3, and in this episode I am with Claire BUONAQUISTI. She is a reformer Pilates instructor. She also teaches yoga and Tai Chi. If this episode doesn't motivate you to get active, get stretching, I don't know what will. Claire is so passionate and knowledgeable in everything she does, and I really hope you take something positive and learn something with this episode. So enjoy. Hello, you okay?
You're right, Hannah.
Thank you for coming on.
You're most welcome. I'm very excited.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your background, where you grew up and how you became a fitness instructor?
Sure. So I grew up literally down the road from here. We're at Hallcross Hall, 10-minute drive away, and I've literally been there all my life. So local girl, like grown and bred. And I got into fitness kind of generally at school. So when I was a teenager, I played national hockey. So I played for one of the localish teams who were in the National League, and it was the equivalent of like the championship for football, because most people have no idea what hockey is. So it's the equivalent of championship for football. So I really got into sports and training back then. I did that all the way through to my 20s, when I decided to stop because my body just could not keep up with me anymore. I spent like 9 months in physio because I couldn't walk more than like half a mile without being in crippling pain.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. Fast forward then to late 20s. I'm working as a lawyer in London for one of the big 4 audit companies, and my weekend hobby to try and help me escape is horse riding, which I used to do all throughout my childhood. And I had a horse riding accident. The horse fell on top of my head and left me with a brain injury, and from that moment on, like, my entire life changed. The doctors were like surprised I was even alive, let alone not, in a wheelchair, essentially. So I came out of hospital and I was told, rest. That's all you can do. Sit down, do nothing, rest. And I am not a rest person, like never have been. So I go straight to the gym. And yeah, like, literally, I'm not joking, first day out of hospital, I'm like, I'm going to the gym. Like, I'm not joking. I am like up to my eyeballs in like codeine, and I'm like, I'm going to the gym. So I walk into the gym and I'm like, right, I'm just going to take it easy. I'm going to do some stretching because my body was, I could barely walk properly at the time. I was hobbling up the stairs. It was the biggest error of my life. And then I talked to someone there and they're like, oh, you've really got to try yoga. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I went to my first yoga class and I thought, if only it can put my body back together again, that's fine. And I was in a room full of 70-year-olds thinking, how the fuck can they do that and make it look so easy? And that was the moment where I truly realised how ruined my body was, not just from the accident, but from, 20 years of neglect, essentially. And that started it. At that point in time, I was like, I did yoga every single day because it just made me feel so much better every single day. And very soon we got to the point where my brain wasn't recovering quick enough for me to be able to go back to work. So I had to make the decision, like, what was I going to do? Was I going to try and go back to work and, potentially not make it? Or was I just going to take myself in a different path? So I quit and I ended up becoming a fitness instructor and I've not looked back since.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's a long story.
You don't need an energy drink for your first session back, you just need codeine.
Yeah, I'm not joking, like literally, if anyone wants to cheat, just drug up on codeine and hit the gym.
That's so funny. Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So I wanted to start off by asking about reformer. It was a bit of a trend at one point. I saw a lot of people on their social media going to classes, which is great. But for people who don't know what it is, can you please explain what reformer Pilates is?
Yeah, sure. So reformer Pilates is done on a piece of equipment. It looks like some kind of sex bed or torture chamber. And this bed has a carriage which is movable. It goes up and down the railings, and attached to the carriage is a set of springs, and those springs provide resistance for the exercises. So when you're at home, and the springs are disengaged, so there's no weight being added, but the moment you start to do an exercise, the springs are engaged, and then that means that you're adding more resistance, more weight to the exercise that you're doing. So Reformer Pilates provides you with a way of doing resistance-based training where you have a really, really accurate control over the amount of resistance that you add to the exercise. But because it's all done on this bed-like contraption, it's also very, very easy on the joints. So it's very minimal in terms of like actually loading the joints with heavy weights. Whereas like if you're in the gym doing weight training, you know, you're doing a 60 kilogram squat, there's a lot of weight going into the knees, into the ankles and stuff. So Reformer cuts like all of that out. Because the carriage moves forwards and backwards, it also encourages like this really great range of motion. So what you find is that the more flexible you are, the more the springs engage, so the more strength it adds to the range of motion. But if you lack mobility, because the carriage is movable, it encourages you to go towards the very limits of where you can go safely. So it's great for helping that kind of whole holistic mobility, strength element of it. It's a great exercise. I'm a big fan.
So I think a few people, and especially me, when I went to my first Reformer class, I was a bit nervous. You've got the big beds, like you just said, all the accessories. Is Reformer Pilates suitable for beginners? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions about Reformer. Everyone I speak to, they're like, oh my God, it's so scary. First, I want to get really good at Pilates before I come to Reformer. And it's like, no. You can go straight in as a beginner. The thing I would say is that, like with every kind of fitness activity, there's different styles, and it's going to depend on the instructor you get. So, you know, some instructors will be definitely more geared towards the basics. Some will probably offer a lot more advanced options. And it's about finding the class that's right for you. It's like, you know, in London where Reformer at the moment is so prevalent, you've got like Reformer Stretch, Reformer Pre and Postnatal, Reformer Basics, Reformer Advanced, Reformer Dynamic Flow, Reformer Strength. Like there's every variation you could possibly get, and it's about finding the one that really suits you and what your goals are. So if you're recovering from an injury, don't go to a Reformer Advanced class. It's not gonna help. Go to a Reformer Basics, go to a Reformer Rehab kind of thing. But if what you're thinking is, no, I already train consistently a lot, then try a Reformer Advanced class, you know? It'll be, as long as you get the right class with the right instructor for you, anyone can do it from any level. And that's the beauty about it, really.
That's nice. Yeah, I think like on social media as well, a lot of people think it's all these already fit people that have been to the gym for ages that can go, and actually you can go as a beginner. I know I did. I found it difficult, but we got there.
I think that's the thing, is Reformer looks easy.
Yeah.
That is, which
really
is the
not
thing. Reformer looks like the easiest thing in the world. And the first time I did a Reformer class, I couldn't walk for 6 days afterwards. I'm not, and I train consistently and I still couldn't walk for a week. But now it's like, now I'll happily do like, you know, a class every couple of days.
Yeah.
I'm teaching like pretty much every single day. You pick it up really quickly.
Yeah. For people who haven't been to a class before and are interested in going, could you run through what a typical class looks like?
Yeah, again, it's really going to depend on like what kind of class you go to and what kind of style the instructor favours. So I heard this really great quote on Instagram about Reformer Pilates, and it was this guy who said, Reformer Pilates is one of two things. There's a lot more like nuance to it, but essentially it's one of two things. It's either Pilates done on a Reformer bed, or it's a workout done on a Reformer bed. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for me, I find Pilates the most boring exercise in the world. Like, hands up, I hate it. I hate everything about it. So if I don't teach Pilates on a Reformer bed, I teach working out on a Reformer bed, and I use the bed to, like I say, to like tailor the resistance and things like that, and accesses those deep ranges of motions. I don't do it to be able to do a teaser in Pilates. I could not care less about stuff like that. So it really does depend upon like what what you're going for and who you're going to. For me, a classical kind of like setup would be start off with legs, some kind of legs movement, normally like quite dynamic stuff, so like lunges, things like that, scooters, just to get the whole body like worked up and hot. And then after that, I typically go to abs, get them firing up next. Because once you've got your abs engaged, you can then start to do a lot more balance-based stuff on the reformer. If you're kneeling and you're using the straps and you pull them to move the carriage, if you haven't got your abs engaged, you're going face first into the floor. Like it's nobody wants that. So then it's like get the abs engaged. Then it's like arms. And then I tend to circle back round, legs, abs, arms. And I just go through that. But if you go to more of like a classical Pilates setup, you'll start off with things like footwork. And then you'll do some kind of gentle bridges or some gentle abdominal pulls. And it's like, it's a lot more kind of working through finer movements, whereas I'm interested in let's get the big muscle groups firing and active. That's what I'm interested in more than anything.
Nice. I think a frequently asked question for people who are just getting started would be, is reformer Pilates better than regular Pilates, and what are the differences between the two?
I'm completely biased and I say, yeah, it's way better than Pilates because I hate Pilates. But honestly, the best way to think about it is two completely different systems. You know, when you're on floor Pilates, you're only moving body weight. So it's kind of almost like a precursor to calisthenics if you want to make that kind of description. You're really focused on how effectively you can move your body weight around. Reformer, we're using springs, we're using resistance. You can go anywhere up to, I think it's about 32 kilograms on the Reformer Pilates machine. And you've got every combination between that. So it's, to me, I always liken, particularly in my classes, it's more like weightlifting. Like when people come to my classes and they're like, oh, I do Pilates all the time and I really wanted to try it. I'm like, yeah, but you weightlift, because if you weightlift, you'll know more about what my class is like. If you just do Pilates, your knowledge is not going to help you here.
Yeah.
So.
Nice. I had a look online before this episode and it said you should do reformer Pilates 2 to 3 times a week. Would you recommend this, and what are the long-term health benefits of going to reformer Pilates classes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm going to address them the other way round. Mm-hmm. Long-term benefits of reformer Pilates is increased range of motion, increased flexibility, and increase in your strength. Now, those are really, really important. You know, all the studies are consistently showing that for longevity, you need those 3 things plus a little bit of cardio. And you know how I feel about cardio. We just
it's just not there.
We just forget about that. We just move on from that and hope for the best one day. But more and more the studies are showing that actually you don't need to be able to run a marathon. You need to be able to squat, deadlift, bench your body weight. Mm-hmm. And that is really important. And reformer Pilates will bridge the gap. Like for me, learning how to do pull-ups, yeah, you can do it using bands, and that was really effective to help me get the movement. But in order to build the back muscles, no, reformer does it every single time. Mm-hmm. So they're really helpful, particularly with women. You know, once we hit the age of 30, every single year we lose up to 30% of our muscle mass. Once you get over 60, if you fall over, there's an 80% chance that you're not going to get back up again. So if we don't maintain our strength, our mobility, and our range of motion, you are a sitting duck waiting for death. There's no other way to look at it. Like, we have an under-muscle crisis in the world right now, and reformer is going to really help fix that. So those are kind of like the long-term benefits of reformer, from my opinion, are very much focused on living longer, living a longer, more mobile, more happy life. What was the other question? It
was, would you recommend 2 to 3 times a week?
Dosage, yeah. It depends on what else you're doing with it.
Yeah.
It really does. Like I have people come to my classes. If one girl comes today to my class after this, she'll have been 4 in 4 days. And I think that's ridiculous. I tell her every single time, I don't want to see you tomorrow. Go home and rest. Mm-hmm. Like, you need that rest, you need that recovery to be able to progress. If you're not giving yourself sufficient rest time, you are overtraining massively. Really, it's not going to help, particularly with heavy weight training like we're doing. So I say to people, if you can come once a week, that's great. You will still get some benefits from it. It's just, what are you doing outside of there as well? Are you in the gym? Are you lifting weights? Are you doing resistance training? Or are you at home sat on the couch, eating your body weight in chocolate, which I do on a regular basis? So it's like, what are you doing with it? I would say 2-3 times a week for a reformer is great, but you might find that pushes you into overtraining. If you're also in the gym doing squats, deadlift, bench and pull-ups, you may find that that's way too much, so you may need to dial it down to once or twice a week. It's so individual. Like, what is your goal? For me, my goal this year was to bench my body weight, and I'm almost there. So that's a lot more time with the bench press, and it's a lot more time on the reformer beds. But even I am still only doing 2 to 3 times a week. I wouldn't want to do more than that.
I can't even stress how difficult it can be for beginners as well. I think 2 to 3 times a week is that's a lot for a reformer.
100%. Were you sore after you did it?
Oh, for 3-4 days it was done,
So if you're sore, don't come back. Wait until you're no longer sore and then come and do another class. So that's at most twice a week.
Yeah.
So you could easily do once a week and enjoy 3 days of not feeling like a truck has run over your body. That's ideal. I don't want to feel like that all the time. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving on from reformer, my next question is one I'm quite intrigued in. You also teach Tai Chi. I have never heard of it before, so could you please explain what it is?
Oh crap, this is just falling out.
It's okay.
Where do I shove it in? Right there.
You got it.
Yeah, I'm in. So Tai Chi, interesting. It's an interesting discipline. I got into Tai Chi right after my accident because there were some days when I was so ill, the thought of getting up and dragging myself to a yoga class, even though it's the gentlest thing in the world, was no, I physically can't do it. So I got into Tai Chi that way, and it is a martial art, which it's the most boring martial art ever. Tai Chi is, honestly, there's a reason why we assume that it's for old people, because it's very accessible. Anyone can do it. It's very slow. It's very mindful. It's better done outdoors. But every movement that you do, there is a martial application to it. So it is traditionally actually a martial art, and it was used 5,000 years ago in the East to train their armies. That's what it was initially for. It's a series of movements that are designed to essentially loosen the body, mobilize the joints, improve a little bit of muscle toning there. A lot of them, are all about being able to reach hands up or squat down. Movements that we lose after a while. The amount of 40-year-olds who can't squat with a straight back going all the way to the floor is nuts. So Tai Chi is an exercise regime that promotes that sort of health, and it ties into this other discipline, which is Qigong, and that's focused very much similar thing. The direct translation is moving energy, and if you think of energy as tension, trying to move tension from the body by releasing and relaxing the joints and the muscles. It's the best way of describing it, I think.
Nice. So if people can't go to Tai Chi classes, is it on YouTube and they can do it at home?
Yeah, it's
easily accessible.
I would say don't Google Tai Chi, because there's thousands of different types, and it's you get loads of different forms, which are almost like dances, because there's a set series of motions that you go through and you're meant to learn them. Google Qigong, and you'll get those kind of movements that you can just repeat and practice. And it's a lot more once you know what you're doing with your arms, if you're doing a big circle with them, you just do that for 30 times. So you can really focus on the breathing element of it and just opening out the body, and it just makes you feel quite good on the inside. It's quite relaxing, but at the same time you're moving, and just moving is going to help promote longevity. It's going to help keep you alive.
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep active. I know so many people that are especially older just don't exercise anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy, everyone's just watching TV, or they just don't go to the gym or even for a walk. Like,
I remember a couple of months ago, I was walking the dog, and we walk over like these hills, and there's one bit where you look down and you can see directly into like people's back gardens and into their like back windows.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, it must have been like Monday at like 11 o'clock, and there was a guy sat in front of the TV, blanket over his legs, cereal bowl on the arm of his chair, and I looked at him and I thought, oh, you're done for the day. Like, that's like, that's you.
Yeah.
Like, mate, it's Monday morning. Get up and move. And I think if we can just encourage people to do that, no matter what it is, go to Pilates. It's no matter if I hate it. Like, do something, move. And there's something out there for everyone, even if you don't think you can do it. Like, Tai Chi can be done seated, it can be done from a chair. At least then you're moving your arms, your shoulders, and you'll get your back involved as well. So. Yeah.
That's more me on a Sunday than a Monday. I always try and do stuff on a Monday, but that's me with the Ben and Jerry's. Monday
I like
we're
style.
moving.
Ben and Jerry's, nice.
So you also teach yin yoga, specialising in pain relief. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that and how yoga can help reduce pain for people?
Yeah. So a lot of the pain in the body is due to tension. A lot of it is because we've got tight hamstrings, tight hip muscles, and they pull on the lower back, and that's how you get lower back pain. A lot of it is because you spend a lot of time in the gym doing crunches, trying to get that six-pack abs, but you don't think about doing any back bends. So all of a sudden, you've posteriorly tilted the pelvis and it's staying there. So you have a bulge in the lower back and you're not opening out the front of the body. How many times do we reach our arms over our head in the course of a day? Like, hardly any. So yoga was the single greatest thing that got me out of pain quickly after my accident. I went from, like I said, being balls deep on codeine to, and I had a 6-month supply of this. Like, the doctors were like, you are going to be dead for a long time after this accident. Within 6 weeks, I was trying to come off painkillers altogether, not even paracetamol.
No, that's intense.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it that way to everyone. It was my own particular brand of hell. But yoga became my pain relief because the more I stretched, the more the muscles lengthened, the more the ligaments and tendons began to get more flexible. My body began to right itself. It began to like work as a proper unit and function again. And like I said, that's not just from my accident. I remember being 18. I took a gap year, and I got out of bed. And I tried to tuck my chin to my chest, and I couldn't do it without feeling like I was going to be sick. The pain in my back.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's from so that's 20 years of neglect. I not looking after my body, thinking I was invincible, not stretching properly. Mm-hmm. And the problem we have with society these days is this difference between what's common and what's normal. So it's common for people to say, oh, I'm stiff, I'm getting old, or, it hurts when I get out of bed, I'm getting old. That's not normal. It shouldn't be that way. Yeah. That's your body crying out for help. Like, it needs you to do some stretching.
That's society's normal though, isn't it? Doesn't mean it should be happening. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the problem that we have, is like, that's where we really need to get through to people is, you feel like that, there is a different way. And that way involves stretching, it involves yoga, it involves Tai Chi, Reformer Pilates. A lot of my students would disagree that I specialise in pain relief. Mm-hmm. When you're in yin yoga, it's probably one of the most painful forms of yoga I've ever done. I quite like pain, like hands up, like I'm okay with it. But when you're sat in a posture and you're there for 3 minutes, I do minimum of 5 minutes, it hurts. Mm-hmm. It's uncomfortable. But you can either have the pain of doing it, which lasts a really short amount of time, it's ephemeral, or you can have the pain for the whole of your life because you haven't done it. Mm-hmm. So, in the moment, it's uncomfortable, it's not nice, no one enjoys it. But afterwards, you get long-lasting pain relief, which is, I don't know many other disciplines that give you that, if I'm honest.
Would you say yin yoga is suitable for beginners as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's kind of, you know, I did it having been physically sat on by a horse. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Like, that's generally how I look at these things. And it's like, yeah, you might not be sat in the splits in your first session. Let's manage expectations, particularly not for 5 minutes. You know, it took me an entire year of doing. It took me about 3 months to get in the splits. Then it took me a year of getting in the splits to be able to sit in it for 5 minutes. So you're not going to be doing that in your first lesson.
That still is insane though. I think people think if you can't do the splits from age of 5, if you haven't done gymnastics, then you're not getting into the splits for the rest of your life. But you've done that.
It's such bullshit. Like, I'm in my 30s. I can split in both directions. All right, it's not always pretty, but I can do it. It's consistency. You know, I was one of those people who thought you're either flexible or you're not. I genuinely believe that because my parents had always said it. My parents had always said, you know, oh, I'm just not flexible. I grew up with that mantra and I believed it. And nothing could be further from the truth. You train it just like you train every other system in the body. Yeah, it takes a lot longer than strength. It takes months rather than weeks. But yeah, you can get it just like anyone else and at any age. You just have to, you know, apply yourself, be consistent and do the right kind of yoga for you. Like, some people won't get on very well with yin yoga. It won't suit their body. But for me, yin yoga suits my body way more than any of the flow yoga, so that's kind of that's why I do that, because it works best for me and my system. It's
Monday, so
okay. I was like, oh my god, not today.
At the time I was like panicking.
So yeah, yoga, it does help manage pain because it gets your body more flexible, more fluid, more mobile, whatever style you do. It's just about, again, it's finding the right instructor that's going to help with your goals. And you've got to be bloody determined with it, because the amount of people I get that come up to me and go, oh, I really want to learn how to do the splits. I'm like, great, do these 3 exercises, do them every day, come back to me in 3 months' time. I'll see them in 3 months' time and they'll be like, oh, I didn't do them.
Yeah, it's consistency. You've got to keep going.
Yeah, and it's the first month you might feel like you've made some progress. The second month you'll feel like you've gone backwards. Can you go through that? Are you that determined to do it that you're willing to go through that plateau? 90% of people aren't. And that's why we've got problems today, because people give up way too soon with everything.
Yeah. Thank you. Just for anyone that's listening, we just stopped for a second because the fire alarm went off, but it's not an emergency.
I honestly thought like I was running outside. I was like, lay your hand, I'm leaving you.
Thank you so much. What a good episode. I've learned so much already, and if this hasn't motivated people to get active, then I don't know what will. Before we finish, I just wanted to let people know where they can find you. If you're around the Staffordshire area, Claire does classes in Armitage, Lichfield and Hallcross. Is there any other places you go to that I've missed off?
I actually do a couple of classes over in Leek as well.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, the other side of, that's not in Staffordshire, is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I should probably know that by now. No, I think it's Staffordshire Moorlands. We'll go with that. Okay. So like that area, I do a couple there. But it's best just to check my socials to find out where I am.
So go on, what is your Instagram and Facebook?
God, they're a pain in the arse, so if we can put links in the bio, that'd be great. Yeah. They are @by_BUONAQUISTI yoga for both Facebook and Instagram. So it's one of the perks of having the most unusual surname I've ever come across. No one ever has your handle.
Nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Hannah. It's been a pleasure.